With us this morning to review the papers, the broadcaster Pete Price and the journalist and broadcaster Thomas Copeland. Gentlemen, lovely to see you as always. Pete, we're going to come to you first. Front of the Sunday Express. Michael Gove and Boris Johnson have had an interesting relationship politically and personally over the years, but he's standing by his man on this occasion.
He appears to, and good morning, guys. It's nice to be able to sky again. Lovely day. Well, it's not up here, but start to. Anyway, Michael Gove seems to be a law to himself. I think it was 6 years ago. He stabbed Boris in the back and said he wasn't fit for purpose, wasn't fit to be in government, wasn't fit to run the party. I think he's now fighting to save his own job, but the whole thing is in such disarray. This government, and Boris in particular, has done so much damage to politics in this country, a bit like Trump in America. And I think what's happened now is really, they're all clutching at straws, but I don't know what the
Sorry to interrupt. Just be absolutely clear. When you say that you make that claim about Boris Johnson and politics, what do you mean? What has he done that has diminished politics in your view?
He appears to be a liar. He appears to make a nonsense of what politics are all about. It's a bit like the Italians. They were having an affairs all the time, the Italian politicians. They were famous for it. Now we seem to be famous for telling lies and breaking the law, within the law. But there is a war going on. The bigger picture is the war going on. And that's what worries me, that I don't know who's going to lead if Boris goes.
And Thomas, a not unrelated story on the front of the Observer then, according to party grandees, Boris Johnson is trashing the Conservatives' party identity. I mean, by which they presumably mean, they're not acting in a particularly conservative fashion anymore.
Well, exactly. So this is coming from former leader Ian Duncan Smith, who says that the party now has an enormous identity problem. Now, he pins that down to the public expecting the Conservatives to be low tax, but ultimately and recently Rishi Sunak, and over an extended period of time, raising taxes, things like national insurance, this recent windfall tax in all but name on oil and gas companies. I'm not entirely convinced. I mean, certainly if you look at some of the more recent support for the Conservatives, has it been associated with a vision of a low tax country? Is it actually more about sort of that levelling up agenda, that big statism also almost? And this comes down to this problem that the Conservatives face about the new support that they're getting in some of these red wall seats and their traditional support maybe in the south and the east of England that expect that kind of low tax regime. I think Sir Roger Gale's quoted in this article as well, maybe puts his finger on the problem a little bit more accurately, which is to say there's a combination of a lack of trust and support for Boris Johnson. Pete's articulated that really well just there, and combine that with a general sense the Conservatives don't quite know in which direction they're heading. Sam Coates on Sky did a fantastic report just before the recent policies Rishi Sunak introduced over cost of living, explaining that the Conservatives in government and outside government didn't really have any idea what direction they were heading. Were they going to cut taxes, increase taxes, raise benefits, decrease spending? So that general sense of rudderlessness is one that seems to be really weakening the government, and it's one that I think that Labour has problems with as well. The article here on the Observer says that 24 Tory MPs currently have publicly said they have no confidence in the Prime Minister. Conservative estimates, perhaps privately, of up to 40 having submitted letters to Sir Graham Brady of no confidence. I have no doubt, actually, and Pete just said it there as well, I think Boris Johnson would probably win the no confidence vote. Yeah. He's the biggest and still the best electoral asset the Conservatives have, but perhaps it's a warning shot to the government to say, work out a direction. What is our identity vision, and where are we heading?
Pete, I think even kind of some of Boris Johnson's most strong supporters would suggest that the policy making has been a bit bitty of late. There hasn't been a central kind of narrative theme to it all. If you go to the front of the Sunday Telegraph, your next story, we've been a little bit sniffy about it on the channel this morning. Pounds and ounces back in time for the Jubilee, but all it's doing is putting it on an even footing with grams and kilograms, isn't it?
Well, this story is bizarre. We've left Brexit, and now we can do pounds and ounces. Are we going to have feet and inches back? Are we going to have pounds, shillings, and pence back? They're talking about a baby, a 4.5 kilo gram baby. Well, that means nothing to me. It's a £10 baby. Understand it. But isn't this confusing now? If they're going to bring pounds and ounces back, I mean, I've only just got myself into decimalisation, so I don't know what's going on. And apparently, we're going to get the heads back, the crown on a pint glass as well. I think it's a nonsense story. Brexit is a minefield. We need to sort out our problems out worrying about stupid things like this. We need to get goods in. We need people coming back into the country to work. We need this structure back in place that we used to have, but not pounds and ounces. I'm sorry. What? How are they going to life these people?
Right. Actually, here's the interesting thing about it. Actually, this morning I realised the fact I didn't know. I couldn't remember how many ounces were in a pound. Thomas, you're the token young person on the programme this morning. Do you know?
I'm afraid, and I hope neither of you are offended, I think it's a generational thing. I genuinely don't know what a pound or an ounce is, or actually like a foot. I kind of know that I'm nearly 6 foot, but I don't know what that means in metres. I've literally no idea. But then again, if you ask me how heavy is a kilogram as well, I probably couldn't actually tell you how heavy that is. It's all just so arbitrary. But no, I'm afraid imperial measurements for me go right over my head. I would struggle with a fundamental change to that.
Thomas, we're going to go to your final story, if that's okay, on the Telegraph. The story, I'm told, about driving tests. What's going on here?
Well, I'm afraid it's another representing the young people's story, because I'm embarrassed to say that I actually passed my driving test not that long ago. So this is a story about UK major backlogs.
I was about to be cheeky and ask you if you were old enough to drive yet, but no, you've got your licence.
Yeah, and this is exactly the problem that's being articulated here. So I was ready to take my test right before the pandemic. I think I'd actually booked it, and then of course all the tests were cancelled. This is sort of March 2019 level, having passed, your theory test. Now there's been a continuing backlog in the service. Up to 5 major cities, as reported here on the front page. London, Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester have no slots available until November, meaning that for a lot of drivers it's going to be 2023 and until they're able to pass their tests. Even then, even in November, many students being forced out of those big cities into, Peterborough and Ipswich in order to get a slots into areas of the country that they're entirely unfamiliar with driving in. So, the DVSA, I think, has failed to prioritise this issue. They do say that they've been trying to increase the number of examiners, trying to widen the hours in which these tests can take place, but clearly it's not working, because this is a backlog that is continuing and will likely only get worse as you have more and more young people and you have a growing population at that end. And whilst obviously we should be encouraging young people, and indeed everybody, to try to use public transport where you can, it is clearly the case that in a lot of parts of the country, public transport systems are simply inadequate for people's everyday and basic needs, whether that's for work, whether that's for basic going to the shops, this kind of stuff. So driving's still really fundamental, and if something isn't done, then this problem's only going to get worse.
Thomas, we're going to have to leave it there. It's also a rite of passage. It's also a fundamental rite of passage for a young person, and to delay it for that length of time, yeah, I would be fizzing. Chaps, we will see you again in the 7 o'clock hour. You can stay right where you are after the break. We will be live in Paris after Liverpool demands an investigation into what happened outside the grounds.